to The Found Cause, where we have found our cause and serve the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, the man behind the machine.
I'm Theodore.
That's Theodore. We have been trying to mess with some audio settings.
We're going 2 times speed.
We're at a different place today. We're at my apartment, which has a grand 23-foot long timeline of biblical history, which has really got us high and feeling good. However, the audio will not cooperate, so you're probably hearing this like it's down a toilet tube or a Skype call or something, so hopefully it's not too bad. To my right is
Sebastian, the bookkeeper.
The bookkeeper. Sebastian was on with us on a previous episode, so glad to see you back, Sebastian. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, so this episode, we are taking on a 3-parter. This is the first of 3 parts, so you can look forward to our next 2 episodes. This episode is called Is God?
No.
God is. I've already messed it up.
No!
This is Theodore's baby child.
God is. I repeat, God is.
And our second one will be
God is good.
And our third one will be
Jesus is God.
Blam. You like that? Little trifecta. So today is God is. Of course, answering the question that God is not, or the claim that God is not by many in modern society and from the start of human inception as a whole. So, without further ado, let's jump into things. We are going to be doing a reaction to a famous atheist, famous God is not argumenter named Christopher Hitchens. If you haven't heard of him, he's one of the supposed 4 men of the apocalypse. He's also passed away. But he's probably the most level-headed and articulate of the 4. So I want to take a look at an opening statement from him versus William Lane Craig, who's a famous Christian apologist. And we want to talk about their 2 different styles of debate, as well as how you even approach somebody who is like Christopher Hitchens, an intellectual who said that God is not. But before we get to that reaction, we're going to talk about theism as a whole and why we assert that God is. Yeah. So let me pass this off to Sebastian for a quick second, and for preparation, tell the audience a little bit about why we can trust that not only that God is, but that the God of the Bible is.
Yeah, sure thing. As we're going to talk about later from the approach of presuppositionalism. You got yes. That how can we be certain that God's word is infallible? Well, from that we have to ask from the very beginning, when confronting or approaching an unbeliever, is that we will have multiple options in the very beginning of the universe. So the universe either came on its own from nothing, which is what some atheists assert, which is not only illogical but physically impossible. There we have 2 options from that. That once the universe was created, this creator either has communicated himself to the creation, or he hasn't. Some agnostics will say, some deists, that this creator is there, but he hasn't revealed himself to creation, and he just sits there, chills there in his heaven, whatever. Well, that would also be pointless to hold that position, because if he hasn't revealed himself, then there's no point in having this discussion in the first place, because he doesn't care about his creation or what happens to us. So that leaves us with the third option, which is that this creator has revealed himself to us. Now the question is, does he care about his creation or not? If you compare God of the Bible to take any pagan religion, the one that I have experienced with the most is the Greek pantheism. You have gods like Zeus doing random obscene acts to humans, even though he created them, such as sleeping around with women, turning them to animals so that his wife would not find out that he has been sleeping with those women, or just torturing people for fun. Clearly that deity does not care for his creation. So if that is the case, that such a deity is not worth worshipping. Therefore, that is why we would assert that the record that shows from the Old Testament to the New that the deity that created this universe does care about his creation, has revealed himself to us, and seeks to for us to have a relationship with Him. That is the foundation, I would say, of how we can be sure that the Bible, being God breathed, is trustworthy, following the record in the Old Testament that this God can be trusted and seeks to have a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty lofty philosophical argument for the existence of God, which is definitely one out there, and there's a million you'll find like that. So thanks not only for the example of a lofty argument, but also the argument itself, of course, Sebastian. I think that some of those existence of God arguments can be buying people to just that there is a God somewhere, right? And that's a pretty weak standpoint. And that's not even what Christians are called to do. We're not called to get people to believe in a God, but instead the God. So I think an important topic when you're thinking about talking to atheist friends or just unbelievers in general is that you don't want to win them to theism. I mean, really, you could care less, essentially, if they become theists for most things, unless you try to make them slightly more moral or something like that, though I don't know that you'd accomplish anything. The real saving grace is found in Jesus Christ alone. So you have to argue for the God of the Bible first and foremost. And as you eloquently pointed out, Sebastian, he's really the only one worthy of worship anyways. Any other scenario is a God that you wouldn't want to worship. Next to that, I think that an important topic for this whole discussion is that unbelievers don't even have a grounds to be arguing. If you talk with somebody who's really into philosophy, an unbeliever who's really into philosophy, I have a good friend from college who every time we talked would get into this topic, and I like these topics, but he especially did as well. And the thing he'd always come down to within 5 minutes of the conversation was the fundamentals, the fundamental presuppositions, the assumptions you're coming into the argument with. And usually it goes some way like this. I don't believe that the God of the Bible is good. And then I say, well, what's your standard of good? What makes good bad? And then he says, well, it's whatever people feel at the time, because that's what he's been trained,
That's actually what he says?
Yeah.
It's whatever people feel at the time?
Yeah, like society decides it's good and bad.
Oh, okay.
But then I say, well, then God could be good in 100 years from now, just like when people's standards change, right?
Uh-huh.
And he says, well, that's not really what I'm saying, and then it goes in a circle.
You're misconstruing my words!
Because fundamentally we all do. We all believe, we're all in the basic assumption that there is a true standard of right and wrong. Otherwise, you wouldn't even bother arguing, because Theodore, I could say, your shirt is blue.
Yeah, it is. And it's made by Merrill.
All right, I was looking for you to disagree with me.
Oh. It's made by Merrill. It's not made by Adidas.
And then I'd say, I didn't say anything about Adidas. And then you could say,
it's made by Merrill.
Wait, this is a terrible
blue.
illustration. No, I'm saying you don't even need logic. Like, I could say, your shirt is red, and you could say, no, it's not. And then I could say, exactly. Thanks for agreeing with me. And you'd be like, well, I didn't just agree with you, but logic dictates that I would have to take you on your word. But if things were illogical, then I wouldn't. Anyways, I'm just trying to point out that if we are going to use logic, we're going to use regular conversation, you have to believe in a standard of truth. Just to debate with anybody, let alone live life or aspire for moral things.
The problem is, if you have an absolute standard of truth, then it just becomes an opinion. And in the end of the day, some atheists today want to impose a certain beliefs on people that go contrary to the what God dictates is as good. There's just their opinion, and you can also counter with another opinion. It's like, no, I don't want to do this. You can do whatever you want.
Yep.
Because it just comes down to opinions if there is an absolute.
Some will say love your neighbor and some will say eat your neighbor. Which one's wrong? If you don't have an objective morality, it's just, there's neither. None of them are wrong. Eat your neighbor, love your neighbor, same thing.
You can see how far you can go with the absolute truth and absolutes, even with our language these days. Like, what is identity, gender, what is male, female, etc. But not to go down.
Yeah, we're not going to open up a can of worms, huh? Yes, but no, you're definitely right. And I think that's where this viewpoint comes from, because that's where it ultimately leads to. I think if you pretend like God doesn't exist, and we know this from Romans, we know that all men are suppressing the truth of God. All unrighteous men are suppressing the truth of God. Like a beach ball in a swimming pool, you can try to push it down as much as you can, but it takes effort, and it'll pop back up because you can't keep it down all the time. So one of the ways it pops up is that people believe in objective morality truly. In practice, they do. Nobody would stand idle while somebody assaults somebody on the sidewalk. Nobody would stand idle while children were, sacrificed. 5-year-old children were sacrificed on a fiery altar. These days, maybe at some point, and maybe in the abortion clinic, but on the sidewalk.
Another tertiary topic.
Another can of worms. But these are things that we instinctively have because we are standing on the truth of God, and this comes down to different approaches for approaching atheists. I think that often, and it's not just me, there are essentially two approaches to talking to atheists. Often the most common one that you see from apologists like William Lane Craig, who we'll hear later, and I argue personally all throughout college until the very end, this way. It's called evidentialism. It is that you start with the baseline that you and the unbeliever are both unconvinced, right? Obviously you're convinced of your opinions before coming in, but you both say, okay, Sebastian, you don't believe in God. I'll pretend like I don't believe in God for now, and let's examine the evidence. And then you say, well, the universe had to come from somewhere. There has to be a beginning. And you can work your way up and say, okay, eventually the universe and creation and observation demands that there be a God. And then after a lot of argument, I'm sure the atheist might say, okay, I give up. There has to be a God. But then you have to argue then out of evidence for a personal God. Like here's the perfectness of creation. Here's lovely things in the earth. There has to be a personal God, a personal lawgiver, that kind of God. And then after a lot of struggle, I'm sure, you may get the unbeliever to say, okay, there's a personal God, but I still don't believe in Christ. I still don't believe in the God of the Bible. And then you have to argue for the God of the Bible. And you have to work up your way through the classic C.S. Lewis stuff, like is Jesus a liar, lunatic, or Lord? You can work your way through biblical cities being found in the Bible, and historicity of the Bible, and the veracity of the Old Testament, the New Testament, as far as how many copies we have of it and how close they are to the originals, all that jazz. I'm sure you've heard it if you've been in apologetic circles for a while. And then maybe, possibly, after straining through all those ways, you have now finally got a unbeliever who's heard the truth, and they still probably hate it. Because guess what? All of us are haters of God if we suppress the truth. So once we've heard it, it doesn't mean we're going to accept it. So you may convince somebody with this. However, I think a much faster and much more truthful way to approach is a second approach. Instead of evidentialism, working your way from the bottom up to God, this is called presuppositionalism. That is that you bear your presuppositions that God is real and that you believe in God, the God of the Bible, that is, first. Because they know what you believe anyways, and they have presuppositions of their own. You should just bear Scripture's witness to them and tell them straight up, every man has sinned, every man has fallen short of the glory of God. So you have to repent and believe, or you'll suffer the due judgment, your due justice for the sins that you have. And that is a jarring statement, not just because it comes with judgment, but because it is the word of God. It comes from truth. And even though you haven't backed it with grand evidence on why somebody should believe in the Bible and who Paul was and all this, they know it in the core of their being because they're made in the image of God. They know that that's the truth. And so it shakes them. And should you doubt me, because I doubted this approach previously, back in college, go look at street preachers, even cruddy ones. There are really cruddy ones, right, that aren't even really preaching the word, but ones that are preaching the word, even if they're, if I disagree on different theological topics, when they preach the word, it slices people like a sword. And it didn't come with any weird evidentialism behind it. And I love evidence. I think we all do. Sebastian, Theodore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we all, when we got into apologetics, it was because of evidential arguments. So I have no lack of love for the evidence. And I think there's room to, once you've stated your presuppositions, you can then work backwards. But you have to start a conversation. In my opinion, you cannot start a conversation with an unbeliever by getting on their level playing field and pretending like there isn't any God for even a second, because you're giving ground to them. You're ignoring the fact that they're sitting on presuppositions by even living and bothering debating that there is a God, that there is a standard, there is a moral lawgiver. you're granting ground to them, and you're not even getting the main point. And you could end up in a conversation for weeks, months, years before you even get to the moral lawgiver God, let alone the Christian God. But if you start with the moral lawgiving God, there is no excuse for the unbeliever. So that's the principle. That's the philosophy. Any comments about that? Because I know I'm pretty new to presuppositional apologetics. Do you guys think there's things you like or dislike about that approach versus evidentialism?
It is a little bit difficult because I also myself like the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I do trust in the power of the Spirit of God to act on any human on the planet. I've been, because of my reading recently and also simply looking up more information on either Greek manuscripts, original Hebrew texts, or things of that sort, I have a heart for evidentialism. At the same time, I do believe that yes, it is wise to start straight up with the Word of God, with that statement that Jesus came to die for our sins, and then back that up. But first, you have to kick down the door, but be ready to back it. But just be ready to back it up.
Yeah,
that's what I would say.
So you agree, and soft spot just like me, but you agree with presuppositionalism.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Theodore?
Although I obviously lean much more towards the evidentialism, I suppose if I were not resisting God, I would have to start with presuppositionalism, and like planting the seed of the Spirit before planting some fleshly, earthly seed.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we're all, anybody listening and us three here, that presuppositionalism doesn't mean that you ignore facts or that you don't talk about them, but you don't start with them. Because ultimately, everybody knows the truth when they hear it. I think that's the key.
If like anyone hears one word from you, it shouldn't be
that nature demands there be a God, right?
Yeah, it should be gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Something interesting to consider as well is that not only does God have the power to call and change a person when they hear the word, I also think that we should consider that just as they can be changed, God can use us in different ways. For example, some street preachers, they might be moved by the Spirit to preach directly to them. But for other people, because God chooses so, He might use you to start out with more of an evidentialist approach.
And certainly God can use imperfect approaches. He can use anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we should be thinking about ideals personally. Like I understand He can also use somebody like Justin Martyr. He's an early church father, and he didn't have a lot of the books of the Bible, so his theology is kind of not that great. But he was a faithful witness for the faith and died for his faith and brought many to Christ. So totally understand that God can use flawed people. However, don't think that we should use flawed principles. Not to say that God can't use them, just that I think that we should use the best. All right. Well, let me give the audience here some resources on presuppositional apologetics. There are lots of resources about evidentialism, arguments against presuppositional apologetics. I think that the main argument, I'll just put it out here, is that presuppositional apologetics ignores the facts. That's what they say, that it is assuming the facts of the Bible, and that's dangerous and not helpful for those who don't believe it. I understand that criticism. I just think that it ignores the fact of Scripture. The Scripture says that all men have no excuse, that they're expressing the truth. One resource, if you want to look into presuppositional apologetics, pretty well outlined. Dr. Greg Bahnsen, he's a dead brother in Christ. I don't know why I always want to point that out.
Sleeping.
I can't find him.
Sleeping
in Christ. Yes. But he's got a book out called Always Ready. It's actually a collection of his speeches, and he was a big defender of presuppositional apologetics. And I just want to quote from this book here. This is Greg Bahnsen. The unbeliever should not be left with false pretenses, such as that his problem is merely lack of information, or that he simply needs to correct some of his syllogisms, or that his experience and thinking are all right as far as they go. In actuality, The unbelievers' espoused principles of thought, reason, and reality would lead to utter intellectual foolishness and destruction. This is what must be pointed out, thus witnessing that the contrary of Christianity is impossible, while on the other hand, the dogmas of faith provide the necessary preconditions of intelligibility and meaning. Such is the scriptural perspective and method. So I know lofty words, but that's the principle that you should understand, that everyone has pretensions, and that anybody who's rebelling against God, their pretensions are foolishness. And simple. Well, any other comments on the methodologies before we actually go into William Lane Craig versus Christopher Hitchens?
Nope. Where do we go?
All right, I will pause and we'll be right back with the debate. See you soon. All right, we are back, and I'm going to play
our live reaction video.
Sebastian had to leave, go to his familia. So it's just me and Theodore, like the good old days, or the days that are currently now. All right, so I'm starting at minute 33, second 22 on Does God Exist? ? William Lane Craig versus Christopher Hitchens - Full Debate HD. All right, Biola University.
MBH, TTP. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, keep in mind that this was a debate after a very famous debate between Christopher Hitchens and a guy named Douglas Wilson, Pastor Douglas Wilson, who is a presuppositionalist. And that debate profoundly changed the way that Christopher Hitchens debated Christians for his couple. I think he only had like one or two after that. Could be wrong, but it profoundly changed the way he debates. So you'll see that he references it immediately. But we'll listen to it.
Well, am I audible?
I'm also going to put it at 2 times speed.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades, friends, thanks for coming out, as Senator Larry Craig actually did say at his press conference. Thank you, Mr. Hewitt and Dr. Craig, for being among the very many Christians who have so generously and hospitably and warmly taken me up on the challenge I used to when I started my little book tour, and welcomed me to your places to have this most important of all discussions. I can't express my gratitude enough. And thanks to the very nice young ladies who I ran into at the Elephant Bar this afternoon, where I hadn't expected a posse of Biola students to be on staff, but where I thought, God, they're everywhere now. Now, what I have discovered in voyaging around this country and others in this debate, and debating with Hindus, with Muslims, with the Jews, with Christians of all stripes, is that the arguments are all essentially the same for belief in the supernatural, for belief in faith, for belief in God, but that there are very interesting and noteworthy discrepancies between them. And one that I want to call attention to at the beginning of this evening is between those like my friend Doug Wilson, with whom I've now done a book of argument about Christian apologetics, who would call himself a presuppositionalist, in other words, for whom really it's only necessary to discover the workings of God's will in the cosmos, and to assume that the truth of Christianity is already proven. And what are called, they include Dr. Craig with great honor and respect in this, the evidentialists. Now, I want to begin by saying that this distinction strikes me first as a very charming distinction, and second as false, or perhaps as a distinction without a difference. Well, why do I say charming? Because I think it's rather sweet that people of faith also think they ought to have some evidence, and I think it's progress of a kind. After all, if we had been having this debate in the mid-19th century, Professor Craig or his equivalent would have known little or probably nothing about the laws of physics and biology, maybe even less than I know now, which is to say quite a lot in its way. And they would have grounded themselves, or he would have grounded himself on faith, on scripture, on revelation, on the prospect of salvation, on the means of grace, and the hope of glory, and perhaps on Paley's natural theology. Paley, who had the same rooms, or had the same rooms later occupied by Charles Darwin in Cambridge, with its watchmaker theory of design that I know I don't have to expound to you, but which briefly suggests that if an aborigine is walking along a beach and finds a gold watch ticking, he knows not what it's for, or where it came from, or who made it, but he knows it's not a rock, he knows it's not a vegetable, he knows it must have had a designer. The Paley analogy held for most Christians for many years, because they were willing to make the assumption that we were mechanisms, and that therefore there must be a watchmaker. But now that it's been, here's where the presuppositionalist versus evidentialist dichotomy begins to kick in, now it's been rather painstakingly and elaborately demonstrated, to the satisfaction of most people, I don't want to just use arguments from authority, but it's not very much contested anymore, that we are not designed as creatures, but that we evolved by a rather laborious combination of random mutation and natural selection into the species that we are.
I just want to stop right there and note that a couple things. First of all, you see that he was mentioning Doug Wilson, like I said, and he's obviously unimpressed by the topic as far as evidence goes, because of course it didn't present evidence as the forefront, but clearly it struck a chord with him because he's mentioning it. And what a non-thing to mention. I mean, Christopher Hitchens has done hundreds, possibly thousands of debates. And so clearly it struck a chord with them. And again, I don't think that you'll win favor with anyone by starting with the gospel, except for those that you convert, because people hate the gospel. So why would they favor? Second thing is that he was mentioning evolution there, which just in case, I think this is such an important point to highlight amongst Christians. So put aside any atheists that might be listening. Christians, I know that there's a debate between creationists, young earth Christians, and old earth Christians. But I want to implore you to see what old earth Christianity does to your witness to non-Christians. it is the logic, the theories of the world. And here's Christopher Hitchens essentially saying that because you've already granted him evolution, if you're an old Earth creationist, you've already granted him the non-existence and non-necessity of God, because creatures could have made themselves. Now, I understand old Earth has God interventionism, but you are playing on their ground. They created the theory, and now you're sitting on it, and it's not biblical. I mean, that's a total rabbit hole. If we really want to get into that, I just want to point out that weaknesses in approach will be destroyed by somebody as good as Christopher Hitchens at debate. Any comments, Theodore?
Well, that's still kind of another topic, but I think you might be able to argue, well, whether you're like an old Earth or young Earth person. But one thing I heard recently is that there's, like, we can grant you survival of the fittest, but the evolutionist or anybody still can't tell you what the arrival of the fittest is. Because obviously we go back to origins, and evolution, if true, can explain how we get to some point based on a previous point, but it can't explain how we get to, like, the original point.
Mm-hmm. So both from an origin of life perspective, but also from a new traits perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard this argument, and that's why one of the this is a total rabbit trail, but that's why one of the theorists of evolution, I'm forgetting his name, of course, but not Charles Darwin, but there's a theory of evolution called forgetting it all. I should have prepared. Rapid evolution, where there's rapid periods of changes, so that environmental condition forces change, and so things rapidly evolve principally because there's no fossil evidence for transitionary species. So one way to explain that away is that there wasn't time, because evolution happens in spurts. It's on the tip of my tongue what it's actually called, the theory, but whatever. Rapid evolution, that's not the name.
Rapid evolution kind of sounds like when a tornado goes through a field, and then it mashes a bunch of houses together and forms an airplane.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yep, and I understand. So I get your point, Theodore, and that I guess old Earth creationists could also argue against non-theistic evolution because of evidence reasons too. I just don't like even granting the ground, but that is really a separate discussion, because then you have to talk about the merits of truth.
Yeah.
All right, we'll continue.
Today, it is of course open to the faithful to say that all this was, now that they come to know it, now that it becomes available to everybody, now that they think about it, and now that they've stopped opposing it or trying to ban it, then they can say, actually, on second thought, the evolution was all part of the design. Well, as you will recognize, ladies and gentlemen, there are some arguments I can't be expected to refute or rebut, because there's no way around that argument. I mean, if everything, including evolution, which isn't a design, is nonetheless part of a divine design, then all the advantage goes to the person who's willing to believe that. That cannot be disproved. But it does seem to be a very poor, very weak argument, because the test of a good argument is that it is falsifiable, not that it's unfalsifiable. So this tactic, or this style of argument, which we've had some evidence of this evening, I would rebaptize, or when I dare say, I would rechristen it as retrospective evidentialism. In other words, everything can, in due time, if you have enough faith, be made to fit. And you too are all quite free to believe that a sentient creator deliberately, consciously put himself or herself or itself to the trouble of going through huge epochs of birth and death of species over eons of time, in which 99%, in the course of which, at least 99.9% of all species, all life forms ever to have appeared on Earth have become extinct, as we nearly did as a species ourselves. I invite you to look up the very alarming and beautiful and brilliant account by the National Geographic's coordinator of the Genome Project. By the way, you should send in your little sample from the inside of your cheek and have your African ancestry trace. It's absolutely fascinating to follow the mitochondrial DNA that we all have in common, and that we have in common with other species, other primates, other life forms.
Again, I'm just going to poke, reconsider if you're older. That's all I want to say, because you can see where he's taking it. And I think he's doing you justice. I think he's taking, if you give him an inch, he's taking the whole mile, because that's where it leads. That's my opinion, and you can see how he's arguing. So that's his opinion as well, Christopher Hitchens.
Essentially, he's equating evolution with zero God.
The non-need for creator. And he's saying that should you suppose that a creator did it, you're kidding yourself, because it doesn't look like a creator made it, if you grant the evolutionist claims and the rest of the evidence he's spouting off. So again, just something to consider.
And find out where in Africa you came from. But there came a time, probably about 180,000 years ago, when, due to a terrible climatic event, probably in Indonesia, an appalling global warming crisis occurred. And the estimate is that the number of humans in Africa went down to between 40 and 30,000. This close, think about fine-tuning, this close to joining every other species that had gone extinct. And that's our Exodus story, is that somehow we don't know how. It's not written in any scripture, it's not told in any book, it's not part of any superstitious narrative, but somehow they escaped from Africa to cooler latitudes. was made. But that's how close it was. You have to be able to imagine that all this mass extinction and death and randomness is the will of a being. You're absolutely free to believe that if you wish. And all of this should happen so that one very imperfect race of evolved primates should have the opportunity to become Christians or to turn up at this gym tonight. All of that was done with us in view. It's a curious kind of solipsism. It's a curious kind of self-centeredness. I was always brought up to believe that Christians were modest and humble. They comported themselves with due humility. There's a certain arrogance to this assumption. All of this extraordinary development was all about us. And we were the intended and desired result, and everything else was in the discard. The tremendous wastefulness of it, the tremendous cruelty of it, the tremendous caprice of it, the tremendous tinkering and incompetence of it. Never mind. At least we're here, and we can be people of faith. It doesn't work for me. I have to simply say that, and I think there may be questions of psychology involved in this as well. Believe it if you can. I can't stop you. Believe it if you like. You're welcome. It's obviously impossible, as I said before, to disprove, and equally obviously helps you to believe it if, as we all are, you're in the happy position of knowing the outcome. In other words, we are here, but there's a fallacy lurking in there somewhere too. Is there not? Now, it's often said, was said tonight, and Dr. Craig says in print, that atheists think they can prove the non-existence of God. This, in fact, very slightly but crucially misrepresents what we've always said. There's nothing new about the new atheists, it's just very recent. There's nothing particularly. Dr. Victor Stenger, a great scientist, has written a book called The Failed Hypothesis, which he says he thinks that science can now license the claim that there definitely is no God. But he's unique in that, in fact, I think very bold and courageous. Here's what we argue. We argue quite simply that there's no plausible or convincing reason, certainly no evidential one, to believe that there is such an entity, and that all observable phenomena, including the cosmological ones which I'm coming, are explicable without the hypothesis. You don't need the assumption. And this objection itself, our school falls into at least two, perhaps three sections. There's no such thing, no such word that there should be as adeism, or as being an adeist. But if there was one, I would say that's what I was. I don't believe that we are here as a result of design, or that by making the appropriate propitiations and adopting the appropriate postures and following the appropriate rituals, we can overcome death. I don't believe that.
I just want to pause there and say, note that he is not going to get to the underlying problems with saying that there is no God that come from you heard him, and Christopher Hitchens, I think, is a master at debate in doing this. He intertwines what looks like total logic, straight up reason with claims to morality, and that this is gross, and it's a gross God that would cause the amount of death in evolution, regardless of whether you believe in evolution or not, that there's death in the world, there's suffering in the world. So he uses the same argument. He's claiming moral things, trying to rouse the emotions of the crowd by instilling and calling upon the image of God that's in all the audience members, that they do have a sense for morality because of God's given morality. He tries to use that emotion and then chain it with an evolutionist, atheist perspective on top of it. And I think you have to really watch it because he does it. He's a quick talker, especially in 2 times speed here, and he's
an artificially quick talker.
Artificially quick talker and a quick talker even you don't have a 2 times speed. And he's experienced, so he weaves these things in pretty well. And so right now he's going through the rest of his argument. I just want to keep that in mind.
Is this actually part of the debate?
This is the opening statement. So we're just going to listen to the opening statement today. Yeah. I think it shows you, opening statements are great because it shows you their position if they met you in an elevator. And that's kind of what we end up witnessing to people. It's usually a small 20-minute conversation.
And for whatever reasons, don't. If there was such a force, which I cannot prove by definition that there was not, if there was an entity that was responsible for the beginning of the cosmos, and that also happened to be busily engineering the very laborious production of life on our little planet, it still wouldn't prove that this entity cared about us, answered prayers, cared what church we went to, or where we went to one at all, cared who we had sex with, or in what position, or by what means, cared what we ate, or on what day, cared whether we lived or died. There's no reason at all why this entity is completely indifferent to us. That you cannot get from deism to theism, except by a series of extraordinarily generous to yourself assumptions. The deist has all his work still ahead of him to show that it leads to revelation, to redemption, to salvation, or to suspensions of the natural order, in which hitherto you'd be putting all your faith, all your evidence is on scientific and natural evidence, or why not, for a change of pace and a change of taste, say yes, but sometimes the same natural order, which is so miraculous in observation, no question about it, is so impressive in its favouring the conditions for life in some ways, but it's randomly suspended where miracles are applied. So with the caprice and contempt, these laws turn out not to be so important after all, as long as the truth of religion can be proved by their being rendered inoperative. This is having it both ways, in the most promiscuous and exorbitant manner.
I want to pause it there and say that is what you have to battle through if you do an evidentialist view. You have to battle through hard, I think I can say, hatred of God, straight up, hates the idea of God, and doesn't believe it. And he's saying that it's not even possible, even if you grant deism, I'm going to repeat what he just said, even if you grant deism, so that a God concept is necessary for the creation of life, or the creation of the universe, whatever it might be, you can never grant evidentially theism, because he says there's just not enough evidence in the world to convince him, and he's seen evidence up and butt. So I think it's a witness to anyone listening that this is the peak of what you are debating, and people don't usually think as logically or plainly as Christopher Hitchens when they're talking with you or thinking on their own. So this is, I think, crystal clear the position of the non-believer.
In my submission. Bear in mind also that these are not precisely the differences between Dr. Craig and myself, morally or intellectually equivalent claims. After all, Dr. Craig, to win this argument, has to believe and prove to a certainty. He's not just saying there might be a God, because he has to say there must be one, otherwise we couldn't be here and there couldn't be morality. It's not a contingency for him. I have to say that I appear as a skeptic, who believes that doubt is the great engine the great fuel of all inquiry, all discovery, and all innovation. And that I doubt these things. The disadvantage, it seems to me, in the argument goes to the person who says, no, I know, it must be true, it is true. We're too early in the study of physics and biology, it seems to me, to be dealing in certainties of that kind, especially when the stakes are so high. It seems to me, to put it in a condensed form, extraordinary claims, such as the existence of a divine power with a son who cares enough to come and redeem us. Extraordinary claims require truly extraordinary evidence. I don't think any of the evidence we heard from Dr. Craig, brilliantly marshaled as it was extraordinary enough to justify the extreme claims that are being made and backed by it. Hypocrisy, said La Rochefoucauld, is the compliment that flies place of virtue. Retrospective evidentialism strikes me in something of the same sort of light. It's a concession made to the need for a fact. Maybe we better have some evidence to go along with our faith. But look at what Dr. Craig says in his book. He says, I'll quote directly, he says, should a conflict arise between the witness of the Holy Spirit to the fundamental truth of the Christian faith and beliefs based upon argument and evidence, then it is the former which must take precedence over that.
And I'll pause there again. I know I'm highlighting this throughout the thing, but I think it really talks about the approach, and I think a really simple approach that we as Christians should take to non-believers is the presuppositional, just giving the gospel. Because if you try to get into the weeds here, you can spend your entire career, like Craig does, Dr. William Lane Craig does, and convince no one, at least like Christopher Hitchens here. It's just not convincing. And it could be that he's being illogical, he's not looking at the evidence that you're sharing, but he actually hates God. So of course he's not giving it a fair shake. And I think that, again, this is just setting up that you really should start with the gospel as opposed to trying to battle through all the evidence. You can give evidence, and I think that all these points that Christopher is bringing up are either dishonestly roping in evolution into the equation, that he's already granting that evolution is a thing in long time scales, but also morality and all these other things. Just attack him straight up on his principles, on the fact that he's even thinking about logical discussions, that he's even wanting morality to be an objective truth, because you can't have those without a God. You can't have reason, you can't have logic, you can't have morality without a God. And that's simple. You don't need a PhD to witness on that front.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, you're looking deep in thought.
Yeah, trying to remember.
I think also you can see I'm not a hater of William Lane Craig, although I don't like his approach. You can see that Christopher Hitchens is pointing out the inconsistency. He sees it, that Lane Craig starts off with evidence, but his penultimate is that God is actually God, because Craig is a Christian, right? Really a Christian. So at his heart of hearts, because it's been changed by the Lord, he knows that God is real, and that the Christian God is the God, and that he's the only salvation. So his presupposition is truly that God is real, that the Bible is true, and that we have to repent and believe to be saved. So Christopher Hitchens points it out. He points it straight out. He says, here's a quote from William Lane Craig's book: when evidence goes against the plain ordering of Scripture, Scripture wins up. And Christopher says that's inconsistent with his start of the argument, which is all about evidentialism, which it is. That's because the presupposition of William Lane Craig is not what he says it is. He says, I'll come from it at a neutral ground when he talks with an atheist, but he's really not. He really has the presupposition that Jesus is God and that God is real, and the atheist has the opposite presupposition. Yeah, all right, we'll continue.
He has not vice versa, but you don't have to put the vice versa. It's clear enough as it is. I'll say it again. Should a conflict arise between the witness of the Holy Spirit to the fundamental truth of the Christian faith and beliefs based on argument and evidence, then it's the former which must take precedence over the latter. That's not evidentialism. That's just faith. It's faith by right belief. It's rephrased in another edition. It says, therefore, the role of rational argumentation in knowing Christianity to be true is the role of the servant. A person knows Christianity is true because the Holy Spirit tells him it is true. And while argument and evidence can be used to support conclusion, they cannot legitimately overrule it. Now, then he goes on to say, the Bible says all men without excuse, even those who are given no reason to believe, and many persuasive reasons to disbelieve have no excuse. Because the ultimate reason they do not believe is that they have deliberately rejected God's Holy Spirit. That will have to be me. But you see where this lands you, ladies and gentlemen, with the Christian apologetic. You're told you're a miserable sinner who is without excuse. You've disappointed your God who made you, and you've been so ungrateful as to rebel. You're contemptible. You're worm-like. But you can take heart. The whole universe was designed with just you in mind. These two claims are not just mutually exclusive, but I think they're intended to compensate each other's cruelty and ultimately absurdity. In other words,
now I just want to point out, the universe wasn't made for our benefit, it's made for God's benefit. And if Christopher was being honest, or if he knew better, I think that he would understand. The Christian claim is not that the universe is made for man. And maybe that is something that he's heard from Christians, and it's a false view of man. The universe was made for God. God created it for his own pleasure, and we benefit from his graceful creation of us. So that's an important distinction.
And I was just going to add, so I remember, because he mentioned extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yep.
But then I think somebody once said, there's probably been several things along these lines, but like even if God showed himself to you, you'd pass it off as a hallucination.
Mhm.
or something like that.
Yeah, it's a
And
Richard Dawkins question. He famously was asked that in
Oh,
Q&A,
okay.
and he said, well, I've just,
Uh-huh.
there's just the hallucination. Yeah, I'm going crazy.
And even if you think it was God, then still do you have that hatred for him? And you still get to choose whether you follow him or not. So, yeah, going back to that Romans.
Yes, and I think you can debate with Christians all day long as far as how God works and what the view of man is. But if you try to apply it in a debate with an unbeliever, you'll see where they take it. I think Christopher Hitchens is really good at what he does, and so you can see where he's taking even a small difference from what I believe is the truth of man. If you say that the story of God is really about man, and that he's allowing men to choose, and he's really creating the perfect man, and he's created all earth for men and stuff like that, you see where Christopher Hitchens is taking that.
Mhm.
I think you have to stay God-centered and praise God. As an aside, praise God that He raises up men like Christopher Hitchens to sharpen the church, because he shows he forces people like me and you, Theodore, who I used to be William Lane Craig, terrible carbon copy, and I know you've been in similar apologetic circles.
Mhm.
It's people like Christopher Hitchens, regardless of his state of salvation. I don't know where he was when he died. But regardless of where he ended up, God plainly used this man's life, rebellious as he was, to sharpen us. And the same thing goes for our theological debates within the church. But I am greatly appreciative of somebody like Christopher Hitchens for forcing us to have very good argumentation.
But this is occasional convenience. Seek and ye shall find. I remember being told that in church many times as a young lad. Seek and ye shall find. I thought it was a sinister injunction. But it's all too likely to be true. We are pattern-seeking mammals and primates. If we can't get good evidence, we'll go for junk evidence. If we can't get a real theory, we'll go with conspiracy theory. You see it all the time. Religion's great strength is that it was the first of our attempts to explain reality, to make those patterns take some kind of form. It deserves credit. It was our first attempt at astronomy, our first attempt at cosmology, in some ways our first attempt at medicine, our first attempt at literature, our first attempt at philosophy. Good. While there was nothing else, it had many functional uses of that kind. Never mind that they didn't know that germs cause disease. Maybe evil spirits cause disease. Maybe disease is a punishment. Never mind that they believed in astrology rather than astronomy. Even Thomas Aquinas believed in astrology. Never mind that they believed in devils. Never mind that things like volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tidal waves were thought of as punishments, not as natural occurrences on the cooling crust of a planet. The pattern seeking has gone too far. And it's gone, I think, much too far with what was until recently thought of as Christianity's greatest failure, greatest of all failures, cosmology, the one thing Christianity knew nothing about and taught the most abject nonsense about. For most of its lifetime, Christianity taught that the earth itself was the center of the universe, and we had been given exclusive dominion as a species over it. Could not have been more wrong. How are we going to square the new cosmology, the fantastic new discoveries in physics with the old dogmas? Well, one is the idea of this fine-tuning, about which I've only left myself 3.5 minutes. I'll have to refer some of this to later in the discussion. This is essentially another form of pattern seeking on the basis of extremely limited evidence. Most physicists are very uncertain, as they have every right to be. In fact, I would say, for physicists, as they have the duty to be at the moment, extremely uncertain about the spatio-temporal dimensions of the original episode, the Big Bang, as it's sometimes called. We're in the very, very early stages of this inquiry. We hardly know what we don't know about the origins of the universe. We're viewing it from an unimaginable distance, not just unimaginable distance in space, with a perch on a tiny rock in an extremely small suburb of a fairly minor galaxy, trying to discern origins, but also at an unbelievable distance in time. And we claim the right to say, we can see the finger of God in this process. It's an extraordinarily arrogant assumption. It either deserves a Nobel Prize in Physics, which it hasn't yet got, I notice. I don't know any physicist who believes these assumptions are necessary, or it deserves a charge of hubris. Let me make 3 tiny quick objections to this.
I just want to say that I think that it's hard to say that the Earth is conclusively not the center of the universe. Not that I think that the Bible exclusively says that we are, but I don't. To Christopher Hitchens' point there, he's saying that the universe is so vast that it's hard to say conclusively that you can see the finger of God in this. However, he's conclusively saying that the church is wrong, or the church historically has been wrong in saying that the Earth is the center of the universe. From what I know about physics in general, it'd be very hard to, well, I guess it wouldn't be very hard, but the distance to the background radiation across the entire universe, which we can see with telescopes, is the same. It's all equidistant from the Earth. So that might infer that we are the center of the universe, even if we orbit the sun. But, I'm not an astrologist. I just want to point out that it's not ridiculous to think that the Earth is the center of the universe, and it's presumptuous on his part, especially hypocritical, considering he's making the Christians out to be presumptuous here, that he understands the universe so well that the Earth is not the center, and that cosmology allows for there to be no God, even though he just admitted that we know like 1% of all there is.
As it stands, I'm no more a physicist than most of you are. I'll make some lay objections. One, was there pre-existing material for this extra spatio-temporal being to work with? Or did he just will it into existence, the ex-nihilo? Who designed the designer? Don't you run the risk with the presumption of a god and a designer and an originator of asking, well, where does that come from? Where does that come from? And locking yourself into an infinite regress. Why are there so many shooting stars, collapsed suns, failed galaxies we can see. We can see with the aid of a telescope. Sometimes we can see with the naked eye. The utter failure, the total destruction of gigantic, unimaginable sweeps of outer space. Is this fine-tuning, or is it extremely random, capricious, cruel, mysterious, and incompetent? And have you thought of the nothingness that's coming? We know we have something now, and we speculate about what it might come from, and there's a real question about ex nihilo. But nihilo is coming to us. In the night sky, you've already seen that Andromeda galaxy. It's heading straight for ours on a collision course. Is that part of the design? Was it fine-tuned to do that? We know that from the red light shift of the Hubble telescope, or rather Edwin Hubble's original discovery, the universe is expanding away from itself at a tremendous rate. It was thought that rate would go down. For Newtonian reasons, no. It's recently proved by Professor Lawrence Krauss, the rate of expansion is increasing. Everything's exploding away even faster. Nothingness is certainly coming. Who designed that? That's all. If before these things happen, we don't have the destruction of our own little solar system, in which already there's only one planet where anything like life can possibly be supported. All the other planets are too hot or too cold to support any life at all. The sun is due to swell up, burn us to a crisp, boil our oceans, and die, as we've seen all the other suns do in the night sky. This is not fine-tuning, ladies and gentlemen. And if it's the work of a designer, then there's an indictment to which that designer may have to be subjected. Another time, I'm very grateful for your kindness and hospitality.
You can see that's the end of the opening statement, and he ends it with a moral call. And that's why I think you have to watch, because there he was. He was just claiming that this God is, if he's fine-tuned it to be the way it is, which I think all Christians would claim that he has, because he's the creator. So whatever the truth is, if the sun will eventually swallow the earth, of course, it's on huge timescales, but then he has created it that way. And who are you to say to God that that's bad? But he's saying it is bad, and he doesn't even have a standpoint for why it would be bad. Why would it be bad? We're just meat bags, right? And in a he said uncaring, incompetent universe. So who cares that we'd be swallowed up? In fact, why even have this conversation with us? Because you shouldn't really care about anything if there's no objective right or wrong, good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Oh,
another thought or two is like, if God wanted to create us perfect, presumably he could have created us just perfect and just that to be that and nothing other than that. But then you got to define perfection, and you can probably only define perfection from an objective perfect God, not a subjective human. And then I was thinking, if God wanted to make everything perfect like a machine, then obviously we'd just be like clocks or robots and whatnot, and that'd be like incomparable to genuine humanity and freedom and change and learning and whatnot.
I don't know about that, but
well, okay, yeah. I guess we defer there.
Yeah,
we differ.
I think what I can agree with you there, Theodore, is on the vast majority, and that is that God is the standard for truth, and therefore, if He was going to make us perfect in the beginning, first of all, He could have, in theory, and for us to look at creation and say, this is not perfect, and therefore there is no God, because I know God and He would have made it perfect. But how presumptuous, right? So God's perfect will is that there be imperfection, because we know that God is perfect, and here we see imperfection on this earth. So no Christian is saying that God is required to make all things perfect in their outset. And so Christopher Hitchens' demand of God is not godly. And that's not just Christopher Hitchens. He's taking and is a forefront of many, many, many opinions and on that same front, that if there was a God, He's bad, and there is no God because I don't see Him, even though we witness His creation every day.
We agree there.
Yeah. So there you go. Hopefully that was helpful to not only hear the theories, especially the difference between evidentialism and presuppositionalism. Hopefully that gives you some thought, and maybe you can leave in the comments or just think about it at home really hard. What your opinion is on presuppositionalism versus evidentialism, and which one do you see problems with the presuppositional approach that we've advocated for on this podcast? Do you see how? I hope I'm presuppositional here. I hope that you see the weaknesses that are caused by many different approaches, including evidentialism, when faced with an expert in debate like Christopher Hitchens, who is not going to play fair, but he is going to poke at every single weakness.
Yep.
How do you think, I want to close this out here, Theodore, with some practical implications. When you meet somebody that doesn't believe in God, and you're in a conversation like that you would witness to them, it's got to be one of the most common, first of all, it's got to be one of the most common conversations you have on faith, because there's a good amount of atheists in the United States, and they're usually more willing to talk about it than a Buddhist would, or even a fake Christian, right?
Sure.
How would you like to approach talking with somebody who doesn't believe?
Well, ideally, I guess presuppositionalism in some way, but actually, somebody at work sent me some video about like what if everything is just a simulation? Basically, the AI creating more AI, and
Elon Musk kind of thing. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, and kind of in regard to that, I take it where he left me. And well, even with that, you could say, okay, so maybe we are a simulation. Then God is the person who made this simulation. What's your problem? And
well, he'll see. He'll say, "Why am I following that God?"
Oh yeah.
And that's the basic question.
Actually, he did not, because everybody hates God.
Oh yeah, he doesn't want to.
Uh-huh.
I'll have to say
he doesn't want to go further talking into that. He wants to stay in his realm of doubt and uncertainty, and not basically grant anything that would be of authority over him, such that he would have to render his perceived freedom and individuality in submission to someone else or some, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so were we all? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think I have not witnessed too many atheists on this level. Like I've said before, recently was hit by this kind of claim that we should be doing presuppositionally sharing the gospel. I was definitely an evidential boy, big fanboy. I never really watched William Lane Craig, to be honest, but definitely heard the C.S. Lewis arguments and just evidentialist claims in general. I still like these evidences, but really big into battling against evolution. So the Creation Museum style evidences and stuff like that. However, I have shared one time of memory presuppositionally to guys that I had previously shared evidentially, and I can say that I went right at their presuppositions, and they were furious. They did not appreciate that approach in the slightest. So I don't think it's not a way to make friends. I think you can be polite about it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So be polite about it. You don't have to shove it in the face and say you hate God and therefore you're dumb and I'm smart. Like that's not how you approach presuppositionalism. Just start with the gospel, right? Just start with every man is fallen to sin. Just start with that. You don't even need to go to their presuppositions at the very outset. Start with the gospel so that they know where you're arguing for them, and so that they know there's hope in your message, not just they're dumb and you're right, so give up.
Yeah, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depends on the person. I'm not sure, or God's way of saving them. But what was I going to say? Pause. Play. Oh, I forgot it.
You're getting distracted.
Yeah.
By the 23-foot long biblical timeline, huh?
Yeah, and the guitar. I really like the artwork there.
Yeah. We got a bachelor pad right now, a little 1-bedroom apartment, and it's feeling bachelor paddy. The paintings have fallen off the wall, except for a couple. The timeline is up there, getting all the babes, and I have a folding table in the middle of the living room so that we can do this podcast. Have I watched enough time?
So,
nice.
So what I was going to say is that I generally bring questions up to the person that are basically leading questions to there is a God, there is the Christian God. And I try to make them think through, I guess, what they're questioning me about. So it's kind of like evidentialism with a decent dose of presuppositionalism thrown in.
I think it's like a Socratic method, right? Asking questions you're actually hitting them with things you're just in question form. Very nice. Very good for workplace sharing.
Exactly.
What you just meant. It's very good for politics as well, in case you ever want to talk about politics. But I think at the root of politics is culture, and at the root of culture is your belief in God. So they all
depravity.
So yeah, I agree. Socratic method is very good as well. I think that's if the person didn't. Well, I don't know. I was going to say that that's if the person didn't volunteer the conversation to you. Usually you don't want to just be like beating people over the head. However, I suppose if they volunteered an opinion of theirs to you, you might still use the Socratic method. I'm a gangster homie G with no emotions at all, and I would just straight up, if somebody brought up their opinion to me, I would, unless it's really inappropriate to do it, I would totally give the gospel right there and start with presuppositionalism, just because we all know the root of things. I think we've all, if you get into these debates often enough, you'll realize that they all end up the same way, unless the person left early because they were having to get a sandwich or something. They will always end up in the presupposition. What is good? What is God? And what is truth? Those are the questions. And guess what? Jesus is God. Jesus is the way. Yeah. He's the truth. He's the life. So that's why you start with the gospel.
Amen.
Amen. So we have been the Found Cause. We have found our cause in the servant of the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Michael, the man behind the machine, and to my left is...
I'm Theodore, who just enjoyed 3 pieces of pizza.
Nice. DiGiorno's better than delivery.
Stuffed crust.
And to my right is no longer Sebastian, who had to leave us. But maybe he'll be a guest star in the future. He lives decently close. That's cool. Someday he'll get a job, and he can't do this. Or maybe he can. We both have jobs.
What? You're saying we don't have jobs?
We have jobs.
We both have kind of 9 to 5s.
All right. Thanks for listening. You can find our latest episodes on youtube.com/foundcause on our channel. That is where we're posting the latest audio. Our archived episodes, which you can download, are on podbean.com/foundcause. That's where you can find episodes 1 through 6. And this is number 10. So thanks for watching. Subscribe, leave us a like, and send us lots of money. By the way, that's a joke. We're not actually asking for money, at least not yet.
Send us something in addition to your tithe. Thank you.
Do you mean send us your tithe and then something in addition?
No. Send your tithe to your local church.
Yes.
Whom you support and are participating in. And then send additional, obviously, lots of money to us.
All right. Tune in next episode where we talk about the second part of this 3-parter. God is good.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Bye.